Thank you, Kate and panel. We are running a bit behind time. We'll try and make up some time. And I'm going to get some clarification about buses that are leaving here in order for you to all get to the gala dinner tonight. So don't worry, we'll find that out. So stick around, because right now, we're talking about this. Travel companies and providers are working to balance between travelers' demands for luxury and convenience with the requirements of sustainability. But actually, is there necessarily a trade-off between them? To turn that around, is it possible to make sustainable, environmentally friendly trips and yet still offer luxury and convenience? Now, luxury travel is booming in certain markets. I was in India earlier this year, and let me tell you, the appetite for luxury travel is massive. We've got 1 million millionaires in India. Every trip, they want it to be bigger and better. We're talking Indian weddings as well. Anyone ever been to an Indian wedding? Whoa, you know what happens at Indian weddings. And they're looking all the time for something extra, something special. But the carbon footprint of these and many other luxury holidays is not necessarily that good. So, something has to give. Now, shortly, we're going to have a presentation from Professor Willy Le Grand on this subject, and it's a kind of alternative take. But my first guest has spent much of his time as CEO of Intrepid, a small group adventure travel company that offers over 1,000 different trips and experiences on every continent. He was tired of making people rich in his previous job and wanted to do something with purpose. So he's had many roles at Intrepid, but in 2017 he became the CEO. And as we'll find out, he thinks the luxury market can learn from the likes of Intrepid. So please welcome on stage Mr. James Thornton. How are you, mate? Have a seat. Sure. I'll swap with you. Okay. I think first of all, for the sake of everybody here, let's find out a little bit more about the company and its mission. Number one, it's not for profit, right?
No, we're a for-profit.
Okay, so tell us more. You are for profit.
Absolutely. So Intrepid.
You've got a foundation.
We have a foundation.
Right.
We have a foundation that's not for profit. So Intrepid is the world's largest provider of adventure travel experiences. We carry hundreds of thousands of customers to over 1,000 trips to over 100 countries around the world. Anything from a beer tour of Toronto to massive adventures to Antarctica, everything and anything in between. We're on a mission to create positive change through the joy of travel, and we do that in two ways, Rajan. We do it through growing the market for sustainable experience-rich travel. It's trying to get people more off the beaten track, trying the local food, meeting the local people, getting under the skin of a destination, of course seeing the iconic sites, but seeing the beauty of a destination outside of just those iconic sites. And the second thing we're trying to do is balance operating a business that has a very strong purpose, but also delivers a healthy commercial return. And as one of our last speakers mentioned, Intrepid is a certified B Corp. We're the largest B Corp in the travel industry space. We've been a B Corp since 2018. And that's companies that are trying to meet the highest standards of environmental welfare, openness and transparency. And we're alongside the likes of the Patagonias of this world, those real iconic for-profit, purpose-led companies. And that's what Intrepid stands for and what we're trying to do. And really we're trying to demyth as well that notion that sustainability is expensive or experiences are a bit niche, or you've got to hang off the side of a mountain or camp on the side of a mountain. So really trying to put sustainability and experience to the forefront of travel.
And what's interesting is, I mean, you are quite radical in some ways, because for you, being carbon neutral is not enough.
No, look, Intrepid starts our carbon journey back in 2005. Our executives read Tim Flannery's The Weathermaker's book and recognized that we were contributing to the climate disaster, a real kind of light bulb moment for us. So in 2007, our then CEO and co-founder at the time made the commitment that Intrepid would become carbon neutral. 16 years ago, very revolutionary. Here today, definitely not enough. So 2007 to 2010 took us 3 years to do it. Been carbon neutral since 2010, but Look, our journey on the climate crisis has been progressive, and we recognise that today you've got to be decarbonising your business if you're going to take active action on the climate disaster. And so in 2020, middle of the pandemic, strange time to take action on the climate when people aren't travelling, but we were the first tour operator to sign up to Science-Based Targets initiative to reduce our carbon emissions in line with a 1.5 degree future, because we just see it as a critical way that the world's going to need to move, Rajan. And the brutal reality is if the travel industry doesn't take action, governments and legislators will progressively take action for us. And we've seen it through the examples we've heard today in France, in Amsterdam and in other places. And so the travel industry is going to need to take action, because soon I think carbon accounting standards are going to be like traditional accounting standards. And if you haven't started to make progress now, you're going to find it very hard to catch up. And you just don't want to watch the climate disaster, I think, unfold from the sidelines. The travel industry, as we know, contributes somewhere between 8 to 11% of greenhouse gases. We've got to take an active role in decarbonising as best as we can, but it starts with measuring, then offsetting, and then into that decarbonisation process.
And you mentioned France there. I mean, you actually don't offer non-essential short-haul flights, do you? Within a country, certainly.
Yeah, it's a big move from us. So, you know, one of the key ways people tend to come to a destination, particularly our American consumers who get limited vacation time. They often want to arrive on a Saturday, leave the following Saturday or Sunday, and so most expedient way often to get to people around a beautiful country is to have an internal flight. But we made a commitment last year that we'd remove 4,000 of our internal flights. So rather than now fly from Aswan to Abu Simbel, we'll put you on a bus, which I think is a better experience. You actually get there in the same amount of time. Rather than fly from Siem Reap to Phnom Penh, we'll take you on a beautiful boat trip, which is just stunning as a way to go on Tonle Sap Lake, down the river. It's a much better experience. It's a less carbon intensive, and so our customers like it, the environment likes it. Seems a good win all round, really.
Now, I could say to you that you are a niche company, that people come to you because of what you offer, and that you actually don't necessarily represent or serve the purposes of the majority of travellers. What would you say in response to that?
Look, I think I joined the company 18 years ago as a sales rep. I was private client asset management, trying to make rich people richer, and wanted to do something better with my life, and it was to work in a sustainable travel company. And you know, back then when I talked about sustainable travel experiences, people looked at me like I had two heads. Today, we get invited on the stage at wonderful events like this and many others, because there's not just sustainability sections at the end of conferences. There's full sustainability-led conferences like this one is leading, and indeed we're the headline speaker at many events around the world. 2 weeks ago I'm at the United Nations with the General Assembly talking about the impact the private sector can have. So people more and more want to hear from us, but don't get me wrong, our challenge is that we need to make the sustainable industry. I think of it as a supermarket. You go to the supermarket now and you've got the health food aisle. Well, effectively, we've got the sustainable aisle of travel. Well, we need to make the sustainable aisle of travel the whole supermarket. And that has to be the future in the way we move forward, because if travel isn't sustainable, it will be taken away from us and we won't have a world to see. And I keep using this analogy that there was a vaccine for the pandemic. Whether you took it or not, there was a vaccine, and we're back here together again. There's no vaccine for climate change, so we need to start to take some action. Otherwise, the world that we get to show off will not be as beautiful as it was, and we'll struggle to run travel companies.
Okay, let's use your metaphor of the supermarket. Is there an aisle in that supermarket which is are you able to have an aisle in that supermarket for luxury travel in the sustainable supermarket?
Yeah, like in any part of the industry, whether it can be luxury, whether it can be more basics, whether it can be more adventurous. And I think there's often a notion sometimes that sustainable travel comes at a big cost. And so therefore it could only be for more luxury or premium customers. And I think that's a big misconception too, Rajan. I think the reality is that sustainable travel doesn't often cost a lot more money. Using Intrepid's Trips, our premium product, we use predominantly first-class local transport. We stay in nicer, locally owned hotels. We have nicer, more boutique meals, but they're locally cooked. We go to, nicer markets. So these don't cost an exceptional amount. Now, clearly, there's some challenges when you look at flying versus rail travel. We know that flying tends to be marketed as cheaper. Rail travel tends to be looked as more expensive. But when you really book your $25 flight from Nuremberg down to Seville, how much is the actual total cost when you've added your bag, added your seat, added all your other amenities left, right, and centre? So I think, again, there's a misconception. sustainability is not just for premium and luxury customers, it can be for everyone, and it doesn't have to cost a lot of money.
I think we're talking about, in a sense, two different things there. One, yes, people perceive possibly that sustainable travel is more expensive. However, that does not necessarily equate with luxury, does it? Because I think a lot of people would regard luxury as being, I just want luxury. And sustainability is, yeah, if it's there, fine. But you, I think, are saying in a way, let's redefine luxury.
Yeah, absolutely. I just don't see that luxury has to. The people that do luxury and spend lots of money, and let's face it, it is still a smaller niche of our industry, but the two don't come at the expense of each other. We're increasingly seeing more and more premium and luxury hotels having stronger and stronger sustainability initiatives, and I think you're going to see that more and more and more over the course of the years ahead.
So, in that sense, are you saying, right, okay, I'm offering you, are you actually saying this in Intrepid? I'm offering you a luxury experience.
No. We would never say we offer a luxury experience at Intrepid. I mean, Intrepid, just to be brutal, goes up to 4-star in terms of accommodation. We're a premium at the highest end of what we do. So, no, we would never say we offer a luxury experience. We would say we offer you a great value experience for the investment that you're making. We'd also say that we offer you a more sustainable choice. We say that we make sure we get money back into local communities where is most important that the higher spend goes to. That's what we say at Intrepid.
Okay. Now, we are short of time, and I do want to get, in a way, a counter view to what you're
Please.
saying. We like debates here. So can I please bring up Professor Willy Legrand here onto stage to give a short, very short, as I say, counter view.
It's not on? Oh yes,
on
mic
now,
is
yeah.
on, the slides are on, thank you so much. James, Rajan, this is great stuff, by the way, and save the best to the last. So, I mean, we have big shoes to fill. It was a great day so far. Who lives sees much, and who travels sees more. It's a crowded space out there, really, when you think about it. And for the average tourist, he wants to travel to a place where no other tourist goes. And for the luxury traveler, even more so. And our industry readily close off beaches, beachfront, in order to offer this unique, authentic, undisturbed experience. It's a crowded world. We do have planetary boundaries that we have to consider. We have less than optimal wealth distribution. We live under this instant gratification and convenience. These are currencies of our days. And so I'll take 10 minutes of your time actually to go through some data and some research that we've done on luxury travel. First of all, thanks so much as well, James, for the tremendous work you and your team do actually at Intrepid. This is great, showcasing how travel actually can be a force for good. So I'm going to look at the other side of the medals, actually. I'm going to look and try to see how luxury, convenience, and sustainability are indeed very difficult to merge, utterly incompatible in some cases, as long as the basic premise of luxury travel remains on conspicuous consumption and functional value driven by status and wealth and high prices. And this is what I'm going to be talking about as a counterpoint, perhaps, to this. To do so, I brought a few slides. I'm just going to go through the first one. We've had banking institute and insurance companies and consultancy telling us about the explosion of wealth, in fact, post-pandemic. By 2026, we're expecting 87 million people with a net worth of $1 million or more. It's a tremendous growth. In fact, it's 14,000 per day for the next 3 years. Perhaps one of you in the room is part of those 14,000, I'm not too sure. And what are those high net worth individuals, what do they do? Well, 70%, that represents 70% of the global spend on luxury travel, in fact. The pandemic has also fueled that YOLO movement, that you only live once movement, and so that short-term approach to everything, basically, and including leisure and pleasure is there. Just to pick up on a few things, so private jetting, it's very small. It's 4% of the global aviation sector. However, the emissions from that private jets are 10 times those of normal passengers on other flights. The number of private jet travel, you've seen it last year, as growth of 64% in the EU only, doubling the emissions. You have to see it this way. Every private jet flight in the EU, that's 5.9 tons. And I know, James, you know what that means, 5.9 tons of CO2. That's 2 tons more than the average emissions per capita per person on this planet for the entire year for one flight. So where does that leave us really in regards to this? Well, I mean, we have the hotel sector that has noticed. Interesting enough is to see the appetite for investors in investing, in fact, in luxury properties. The resorts development are actually booming and offering that exclusivity, of course. That often means, looking at prime destinations. And you are going to modify the landscape forever. And we do have a carbon tunnel vision. I, particularly as a scientist, probably do too, even though I have the biologist behind me telling me that really biodiversity is the big thing that we have to look at. So offering that unique destination, that unspoiled destinations for the very few require, in fact, extensive infrastructure, and I'll be talking about this in a minute, with long-lasting impact. And there is a difference, by the way, between you and your next-door millionaire and the ultra high net worth individual on this planet who really wish to recreate a bubble, or if you will, a self-contained world. And private jetting for the ultra high net worth individual is not a luxury. In fact, it's an operational essential in a world of unforgiving expectations. By the way, ultra high net worth individuals, that's people that have a net worth of 30 million or more. It's a very small percentage of a small percentage of millionaires on this planet, but you can see that there is income inequality in the world of the rich as well. And of course, those ultra high net worth individuals, they may be bored with your traditional luxury. Money doesn't matter. So their lifestyle requires that maximum returns, minimum effort. And so that we've seen this here in terms of that revenge and rebel spending trend since COVID. Next on my list is the shift actually in interpretation of luxury. And I quite like what you've mentioned, James, this idea of luxury as personal growth through travel, the eudaimonia, so this happiness, search for happiness, and this connection with people and nature. But we're all of us are actually on a travel career ladder of some sort. And as we mature, perhaps we go through those stages away from conspicuous consumption, and we're looking for experiences that enrich our lives, as actually researchers like Pine and Gilmore have predicted, in fact, in the past. But this is a small minority of people, isn't it? And the markets are largely shifting. Rajan just talked about it now. By 2030, the Chinese shoppers will actually represent 40% of that luxury market. India is super interesting to watch, with a growth of 3.5 times compared to today's size by 2030. And then the Gen Z and Gen Alpha. Gen Alpha are little kids today, but the prediction is a 3 times growth pace compared to any other cohort. This is quite interesting because, in fact, these are people that are prone to climate anxiety. But there's also lots of those kids that come from very wealthy families and will adopt a similar lifestyle. So all this join a force of luxury travelers, you could say. And what are they looking for, these people? Well, I mean, I think this is where the opportunity lies for us as an industry, because you could say, like James just said, let's do sustainable, let's do regenerative practice, net positive practice. Let's anchor this into our businesses, into the luxury travel experience as added value. I mean, if we don't do this, if we fail to do this actually, well, tourism will remain simply unsustainable. And we have the data, of course, just a little bit more data for you. One of the best studies is actually a 2018 study on carbon footprint of tourism. It was published in Nature Climate Change, and it actually tracks the global carbon movement linked to travel. And I mean, the end of the story is that traveling is largely a high-income affair. Half of the global footprint is caused by traveling between countries of GDP per capita of $25,000 or more. And what's more interesting, I think, is the following, is the per capita global footprint increases strongly with increased affluence. I mean, in simple terms, wealthier people just travel more. And the data shows that past the 40,000 GDP per capita, the 10% increase in your wealth equals to a 13% increase in your carbon footprint. And so we talk here in a scientific term of GDP elasticity of carbon footprint being greater than 1, if for those of you remember when you did economics. So what does that say, really? Well, I mean, at the end of the day, let's face it, luxury is in itself a luxury good, and that's enjoyed by a very small portion of the global society. But this is the most important. It does not appear to satiate as income grow. In other words, we just need to travel some more. Maybe it's good news for all of us in the industry, but of course, it's riddled with challenges. Okay, going, and second to last slide, I promise, and then we go. Growing infrastructure, the last, second to last part. Of course, we need to transport and we need to accommodate and feed and entertain all those customers. That's considerable pressure on resources. For the record, there are more than 6,000 hotels being constructed. 6 to 7 of them will open today and tomorrow and the day after. Each and every one of those hotels got 500 to 800 kilograms of material in each room. Right now in the pipeline, we have 2 million rooms. You do the calculation, we have a massive impact. Luxury property, even more so. This is massive amount of embodied carbon. It needs to be fitted in there, let alone the land change and the infrastructure of building this. That's just for hotels. So anyways, I decided to bring some data along, and I've taken the data from the latest Cornell Hotel Sustainability Benchmark Index, and I looked at only 3 things. Operational. All right, so energy, carbon, water. I looked at the average of all hotels in that database, which is over 9,500 hotels, and compare this with the luxury sector, 5-star properties. And this is what the result is. I mean, basically, we're twice as more energy intensive, we're 3 times more carbon intensive, and we are 3 times more water intensive than your average hotel. Luxury properties are simply, by their size, their amenities provided, the pools, the spas, the many restaurants, are simply more intensive on all resources. And that perhaps says something a little bit about what needs to be done as well. Okay, delivering that luxury, of course, is simply more intense. So where does that leave us? And that's my last slide. I thought it was my last slide, but this is actually another presentation. It doesn't matter, other presentation. Where does that leave us? That leaves us, there's a study, and I wanted to show that one. There's a study that was published in Nature Communications. Maybe some of you have seen it. And the study really tried to quantify the socio-economic impacts or costs of extreme weather event with relationship to climate change. It's the first of this type of study that's really trying to do that. And what they found out, and this is the big data that's supposed to show, but it's not going to come, is that long story short, the damage caused by climate change over the past 20 years cost us $16 million per hour, all right? In infrastructure damage, in property damage, and in lives lost. We're talking about 140 billion per year. In 2022, we're looking at 280 billion for that year. And this is probably grossly underestimated because, in fact, a lot of the data is driven by developed countries and not developing countries that suffer actually most of the issues. And I brought this along because, first of all, it's an interesting study because it says a lot about risks. And says a lot about risk and travel because we are, as an industry, at the forefront of this, very much. And I think some of you know that. And in a sort of double materiality standpoint, we get affected by all of this. But interesting enough, we're the first one to devise products and services that actually impact exactly what we're being impacted from. And so this is the sort of the I don't know, the conundrum, if you would say, of this industry. And that's all I wanted to say, really. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Now, unfortunately, time is short. We were going to have a little discussion here a bit further, but actually, do you know what I'm also thinking? Is that yours is not actually an alternative or against what James is saying. If anything, it's showing the other side of the picture when it comes to luxury. And in fact, it's a complementary kind of approach, right? You're not actually denying that what James is saying is of value.
I think what James is saying is excellent, to be honest. I was tasked with the job of providing a counterpoint, but in fact, there isn't much of a counterpoint because, in fact, I think you said it correctly in terms of that redefinition of luxury. I think there is definitely something happening there. There's no doubt about it. Having said that, the majority of millionaires, as we know, is still far away in that travel career ladder, in fact. And it almost seems as if those people will have to go through the stage of conspicuous consumption, use of resources to achieve something later in their lives that is perhaps closer to, perhaps, I hope I'm wrong.
Well, I described it as a Buddhist nirvana. You mean they would get to another level?
They get to another level. Anyways.
What do you say to that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, look, Intrepid's on the side of science. So I think while it might have been set up as counterpoints, we're on the same team. Intrepid has employed a climate scientist for the last 4 years to help us on our carbon journey. So, you know, everything Willie says is absolutely right. And unfortunately, the travel industry is going to get left behind if we don't take the actions that Willie is talking about. So, yeah, complete agreement.
Perhaps one more comment, because
Yeah.
I know throughout the day there's been a lot of emphasis on the individual behavior, the consumer behavior and the demand. There is no doubt that plays a role. But let's look up that value chain and let's have a look at the banking, the financing, and the insurers as a key driver to change this industry. I think this is, go up rather than just always looking down at individual. I mean, our individual behavior is so linked to our value system, so difficult in many ways to actually change this.
Yeah.
But where the money comes from, this is a different story.
And another way to change the industry is through the incentives that we all get paid. And that's the brutal reality is what gets incentivized gets done. And still far too many of the travel companies and too many of the executives that will be up here before us will be driven on top line growth and EBITDA returns. And so until ESG metrics and until purpose metrics are driven into the compensation packages of lead executives, you're going to struggle to get the change that's required.
Yeah. Listen, Willie, thank you so much. And because of time, I am going to have to cut this session short. James, stay here, because we're talking about resilience next. But thank you so much, Professor Willie Legrand.